Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. This is a scoping session for the General Plan EIR. The notice of preparation went out a week or two ago. There's a 30-day period of time which we solicit comments from the public on what they think needs to be in the General Plan EIR. Obviously, there's a lot of issues to be addressed. It's a general plan. Of course, there's going to be issues. So we anticipate that we'll be addressing the full range of all of the identified scoping topics. With me here tonight are members of the consultant team from Rainey & Associates, Cindy Noss, Rod Stinson, I was going to say Stillman, no, Stinson, and Zach, and I didn't catch your last name, Smith. We were working on different components of the EIR. I guess without taking much more time other than to say thank you for coming, I'll turn it over to the consultant team and they will make a presentation for you.
Great. Thanks, Peter. My name is Rod Stinson. I'm Division Manager with Rainey Planning and Management, and we're preparing the EIR for the General Plan update. So today, I'm just going to briefly go through the CEQA process, where we are in the CEQA process, and the purpose for the scoping meeting today, and then give you an overview of the proposed scope of the EIR as it stands now. So as far as the CEQA process, we are fairly early in the process. You release the notice of preparation, which is the stage that we're in now. There's a 30-day public review period. And once that closes, we'll be drafting the draft EIR. And that'll go out for a 45-day public review period. And at that point, the public will have a chance to make comment on the adequacy of the EIR itself. And then we will respond to all those comments and produce a final EIR. And then the EIR will go to public hearing. And at that point, the public, again, will have a chance to make comment on the EIR and then on, the project, the general plan itself. So this is a flow chart that kind of represents that process. Each of those boxes is kind of a milestone. So to give you a sense of how early in the process we are, there's a big red arrow pointing at the scoping meeting. So it's early, and the purpose of the meeting then is to get your comments on what the scope of the EIR should be. So comments on the environmental issues that you think are important that we cover, and I'll be going through in a couple of slides here all of the topics that we're anticipating to cover in the EIR. So if you can make comments on if we are covering a certain area, maybe a certain particular area within those issue areas that you think are important, or how we should cover it, those would be appropriate comments to give today. And so we're not looking for a general plan, any comments or discussion on the general plan itself. It's to be focused on the scope of the EIR at this point. All right, so I'll run through some of the topic areas in the EIR that we're proposing, and then after that we'll kind of open it up for public comment. So we will be covering aesthetics. We'll have a whole chapter on aesthetics. Going over the existing visual character and quality countywide, and any impacts to scenic vistas, scenic highways that have been identified, and that sort of thing. Then we'll have a chapter on agricultural, forestry, and mineral resources. We'll have a chapter on air quality, and it'll actually be combined with greenhouse gas emissions. We combine those because they're related. And then we'll have a chapter on biological resources. And I should note as well, there's copies of the NOP up here if you wanted to grab one, and it goes through all of this in a little more detail. And there's also a sign-in sheet. If you can sign in before you leave, that would be great. We need a record of who attended today. Okay, and moving on, we'll have a chapter on cultural resources, archaeological and historical resources. Will be discussed in that chapter. We'll look at geological soils and seismicity potential impacts. Like I said, we'll have a chapter on greenhouse gases, but it'll be combined with air quality. We'll look at hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology, water quality, land use and planning, noise impacts, population and housing, public services, so the potential demand increase from implementation of the general plan on services such as fire and police and schools. We'll have a chapter focused on recreation, traffic. We'll have an entire chapter on that. We have a sub-consultant, Fair and Peers, who are preparing traffic modeling for it. And then we'll also look at utilities and service systems, potential impacts related to those areas. So that was real brief. We can go into a little more details here. There's not that many of you, so we can have kind of more of a conversation if you want. But we're looking for written comments. In addition to any verbal comments you give today, we'll be taking some pretty good notes on your verbal comments, but it's always nice to have them followed up in writing. And we have some comment forms here to make it easy for you. You can just write down your comments after you give any verbal comments, and you can hand them in today or mail them in before the close of the comment period, which is February 16th. And so if you mail those in, that'd be great. And then again, just a reminder, just please limit your comments to the scope of the EIR, not necessarily getting into a debate on the merits of the general plan update. So that's all I've got. Pretty brief. So if you have want any more details, be happy to share. But now we're just going to open it up to you to provide comments on the scope of the EIR, if you would like to.
Is there a copy somewhere of your slideshow?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll post it on the website.
Okay. Thanks.
And it basically reiterates.
All right. Thanks. I don't know too much about, not familiar with EIR process when it comes to a general plan, okay? But I noticed that the first thing that you have on your bullet was aesthetics. So curious about that. How does aesthetics have to do with an environmental impact report?
So CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, has certain issue areas that we're required to address. And that's one of them. It's contained in Appendix G of the CEQA guidelines. So kind of dictates the areas that we need to cover, and it says one of them. So just to comply with state law.
So it's
yeah. So
sorry.
Yeah. I need to use the microphone.
Yes. Otherwise, it won't be recorded well.
Right. So in order to comply with the CEQA guidelines, we need to cover certain issue areas, aesthetics being one of them, and then it gets into some specifics on areas within the broader term aesthetics that we need to address. So it's impacts to state scenic highways, areas that have been designated state scenic highways, and then anything scenic vistas that's been identified in the general plan as a scenic resource. We would identify impacts with implementation of the general plan as to whether any impacts would result related to aesthetics. And there's light and glare also in there.
All right. So would that include private property?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay. Thanks.
My name's Tim Laddish. I'm a member of the Planning Commission and need much education before this gets to the Planning Commission later this year, I hope this year. And just to be clear, what you are doing is studying the environmental impact of the draft general plan as it is as it currently
As it-
exists?
As it exists right now, yes.
And then will you be, you'll be pointing out the potential impacts of the plan and possible mitigations that might be
Yes,
suggested?
potentially. So it would be implementation of, the land use plan that's proposed at this point, the land use map, and then also implementation of any of the goals and policies that are within the general plan itself, and then looking at the resulting, any potential impacts still left, and we would then, at that time, propose mitigation as appropriate. And the EIR, I should say, as well, will include alternatives. So there'll be, there's required to have an alternatives analysis in the EIR, so we'll have that as a whole entire chapter as well.
And will you be offering your expert opinion as to whether the draft general plan might have to be improved in order to comply with state law?
Yes, we'll be coordinating with staff on that and provide policies as needed. You have anything to add?
This seems so strange.
From the environmental perspective, if there are other, challenges as far as the legality of the plan itself, we have our county council as well as outside counsel to assist with that. The focus of the EIR consultants to look at the environmental impacts. Are they significant? Can they be avoided? Either, are they avoided through our policy language or the land use map itself? Can there be other mitigation measures that could be adopted as new policies? And if that's the case, is it still significant or less than significant after mitigation? And then we would work on what the end result of that would be. Ultimately, it's the county's decision to decide whether or not those mitigation measures are feasible. And if the Board of Supervisors, after advice from the Planning Commission, find that these measures are just not feasible for the county, then we would need to make certain findings and go through a process to do that. But the purpose of the EIR is to identify the potential impacts, look at alternatives, are there ways that we can reduce those impacts, and it's a decision, it's an informational document for the decision makers.
So, and it would not directly then say, you have failed to, I shouldn't say failed, but the draft general plan falls short of the requirements of the law in this environmental area, blah, blah, blah. It would just be, here are the impacts, here's possible alternatives and mitigation.
That would be something that we would discuss internally. If as they analyze things, they say, wait a second, I think we have a serious shortcoming here with the general plan, we would work on that along with our council to determine that these are changes we need to make. They would identify ways we could mitigate things, but if it was something that was deficient legally, that's something we would need to address. It wouldn't necessarily be something that would be in the EIR.
Okay, thank you.
We'll tag team them here.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Megan Fisk. I'm a biologist here representing the Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center, CSERC. I'm not going to provide very extensive comments tonight because we'll be submitting written comments, but I did just wanted to share a couple points. As spelled out in the scoping letter in Table 2, the proposed general plan would allow nearly 66,000 additional new residents in contrast to the 9,963 that are estimated by the state. That's 7 times the estimated demand, not double or triple, but 7 times. If approved, that will cause significant impacts to the rural character of the county, to natural resources and open space, and to county taxpayers who will be stuck paying for expansive infrastructure to support that development. Our center just wants to emphasize the legal requirement for the EIR to analyze a reasonable range of alternatives, and that we believe there are both economic and social benefits if the county would adopt a rural character moderate growth alternative that provides for no more than 2 to 3 times the additional projected population growth during the planning period. And that would direct most growth to infill and areas already served with adequate transportation, water, sewer, and other infrastructure. CSERC will submit more detailed suggestions of such a moderate growth alternative in our written comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those out there in the lobby, line up, take your name. Well, thank you for coming. Do you have any closing comments or statements you wanted to make?
Thank you all for coming. Great comments, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, we're not attorneys, we're just CEQA consultants.
Yes, we have a team of attorneys working on this as well. Again, thank you for coming. Smaller turnout than I would have hoped, but it means I can get back to working on other things. But in the meantime, then we'll be closing out the comment period on the 16th. So, written comments appreciated then. And the team will then get hard at work in preparing the draft. And we should have that out sometime in the future, depending on the extent of comments we get. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Peter, is this the beginning of the process right here, or is it just a meeting
This is the beginning of the process.
right here, right now?
Well, it actually started 2 weeks ago when we issued the notice of preparation, posted it in the paper, sent it to news outlets, long list of interested parties, individuals, agencies, organizations, as many people as we could get our hands on their address.
The reason I'm asking is because the question was earlier, is this, the environmental impact report is going to examine what is currently the current proposal for the general plan, so the general plan draft that's proposed right now.
That's correct, yes. The draft that was reviewed by the Planning Commission, sent to the Board of Supervisors for identification as the project description. That's the draft that we're working on. Now, as Rod noted, that we need to prepare alternatives. We compare that with what are some of the alternatives. The young lady from CERC suggested that we come up with a more moderate growth alternative. And those are things that we're required to look at under the law, but it just makes sense. Well, how would that compare if we looked at this
Sure,
way?
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I would also ask that you compare the effect of economic development in the county and the county's ability to survive under economics.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was just wanted to make it clear that the draft as proposed right now is what's going to be on the EIR.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Good night, everyone. Have a nice evening.